We are already at 10:01, so let's get us going. So, everybody, welcome to Planning for EV Readiness and Community Resiliency Efforts. My name is Justin Brousseau, and I'm the Deputy Director for CivicSpark, the AmeriCorps program powered by CivicWell. We'll get started shortly, but at first, a few housekeeping items. Today's event is part of our webinar series highlighting CivicWell's collaborative projects. Each event brings together a representative from a local government or community agency, along with a staff member from CivicWell, to talk through the ins and outs of the work and inspire the types of projects that could be possible within your own communities. If you have any questions during the presentation, please place them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll facilitate the Q&A at the end of the presentation. I'll make sure to review the questions there. Please keep in mind, we can't address questions that are specific to one city. We encourage you to keep your questions general in order to be inclusive for all of our full audience. Our speakers today are great because these are two that I got to know pretty early on since I joined CivicSpark this past spring. First is Darin Graber. Darin came to the CivicSpark Fellowship after having worked in higher education for nearly 15 years. As a teacher and researcher, he studied the cultural implications of watershed misuse and early industrialization. Now he enjoys working in the public sector while serving his passion for the environment and a sustainable society in a more direct way. He recently began his second service term with the City of Grand Junction. Jenny Nitzky has been with the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Grand Junction since August of 2022. Prior to working for the City of Grand Junction, she served as a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa and then interned for the City of Gunnison, Colorado, helping with sustainability and climate action planning. She holds a master's in environmental management from Western Colorado University. So it's great to have them. I was stoked when this idea came up. We were able to bring them in because they've been awesome to work with. So quickly now, as we switch through, let's give a little bit of overview of what CivicSpark is, since we worked pretty darn closely together with them. So what exactly is CivicSpark? CivicSpark is an AmeriCorps program led by CivicWell, a Sacramento-based nonprofit. Our program has been operating in California for 9 years now and worked on nearly 1,000 resiliency projects since that time. This service year is actually kicking off our 10th year, so we're pretty excited about that. This is our second year of operation in Colorado and Washington. We have capacity for 20 Washington-based fellows and 15 Colorado-based fellows. And as we mentioned, Jenny and Darin, they're in their second year, so they were great. They were great to have on board quickly as we established ourselves in Colorado. CivicSpark's goal is to contribute towards a more resilient, equitable, and vibrant communities, one in which local and tribal governments are empowered and equipped to serve the needs of all community members, particularly those that are being disproportionately and adversely impacted by changes in climate. Gotta go back one. CivicSpark's mission is to build local public sector capacity to address entrenched and emerging issues, serve as a social purpose career accelerator for future leaders, and foster lasting, authentic community engagement. Projects are generally focused on environmental and social issues local governments face. These include climate mitigation, adaptation, and decarbonization, water policy and management, affordable housing and sustainable mobility, rural broadband, equity and environmental justice, and public health. The three main activities that CivicSpark focus on is 1, capacity building. We like putting people in there so they can help get the job done. 2, fellow development, the professional development, giving career opportunities. We say a lot of times opening new doors for people in their own communities. And 3, volunteer engagement, building that network within the community so they can all foster and make a better community for their neighbors. So I'm going to hand it over to why everybody's here today, which I'm here too, because they're a lot of fun to talk with. So I'm going to hand it over to Jenny and Darin. Really excited that they stepped up and were willing to chat with you all today. Again, they've been great to work with, so we're really excited to show you what they've been doing over this time at Grand Junction. So take it away.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everybody. My name is Jenny Nitzky. I am the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Grand Junction. And as Justin said, I've been here since August of 2022. And I am joined by our incredible CivicSpark Fellow Darin Graber, who has been with us since January of this year. So before we get into our sustainability projects, I want to give a little bit of an overview about Grand Junction in general. So we're a unique location located on the western slope of Colorado. We are at the confluence of the Gunnison River and what is formerly known as the Grand River to make the Colorado River, hence the name, the Grand Junction. We're also a different junction. We are the intersection of Highway 50 and Interstate 70. So that makes us uniquely situated to cater to travelers and tourists alike. We are the largest city on the western slope, as I stated, between Salt Lake City, Utah, and Denver, Colorado, and we've got about 70,000 people. We were really at the turning point, I would say, from a rural to a more urbanized city. We were traditionally industry heavy. We had many folks in the oil and gas industries, as we still do today, and agriculture as well was a big part of our big economic driver for us. And we have been shifting to more of a goods and services community. Think recreation, restaurants, other forms of services, and our college, Colorado Mesa University, is actually the fastest growing university in the state of Colorado. So we're really transitioning to more of that city center that people are looking for. We, according to our state demographer, we have an aging population. However, we are seeing that more people are moving here from big cities who want that smaller city life, and from mountain towns who can no longer afford them, especially post-COVID. From 2020 and on, and especially this year, we've really seen that our council, our city council, has been leaning more in favor of projects related to sustainability, mobility, and housing. And those three different groups have actually been created into divisions here in our community development department. In the 2020 comprehensive plan that we created, there was a whole emphasis on resource stewardship and sustainability. And a fun fact is that climate change was actually mentioned one time in that entire plan, and it was one of the first times climate change had ever been mentioned in a plan in the City of Grand Junction. So making a lot of progress in that regard. And since they emphasized that resource stewardship and sustainability was important, they hired a staff person, myself, last August, to start to put an emphasis towards both planning and implementation of sustainability-related projects. As I mentioned, they also started a mobility and a housing division, and they created strategic priorities centered around each that were created in 2021 and have been formulated again this year in 2023. So those three areas are still a priority for our city council, which aligns well with what CivicSpark is looking for. We've got some not really unique situations. I'm sure many of your cities and communities are facing things like the housing crisis, as we are as well. We have a rapidly sprawling city. We're building out into our greenfields instead of up. We're not really achieving that high density that we need in order to help mitigate some inaccessibility to services and increased or reduced vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. And we are also considered one of the country's climate hotspots. So these maps, these came from the Washington Post. You can see in that black outline there that we are right there kind of at the epicenter of one of the fastest warming places in the country. So thinking about heat and resiliency and sustainability and adaptation is a priority of our community, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So in the past 3 years, we have created an immense number of different plans to focus on some of these different issues that I mentioned due to social changes and pressures as well from a changing community. We've got, like I mentioned, the 2020 comprehensive plan. We recently adopted an EV readiness plan that Darin will talk a bit more about. Our city council creates strategic priorities every year, which focus on, as I said, housing, sustainability, and mobility. We've got an urban forestry management plan that was adopted this year. We also adopted a pedestrian and bicycle plan this year. we started a shared micromobility pilot program, and that is, we got scooters, as many of your cities are probably familiar with, here on our streets to help reduce vehicle miles traveled. We also created a water efficiency plan this year. There is a Mesa County Community Health Needs Assessment that was updated in the past 3 years, a Grand Junction Housing Needs Assessment, and they're currently working on an unhoused needs assessment as well. We've got a Parks, Recs, and Open Space Plan, a Mesa County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and we recently conducted our city's first couple of greenhouse gas emissions inventories. So we've got a lot going on. That's not all coming out of our department. That is county and city and numerous departments. But all that is to say is that things are changing, and they're changing rapidly here. So we're trying to keep up with it. And it's a great time to be a part of that change. So I want to talk a little bit more about the specific projects that we have been working on over the past year and some odd months. Some of these are completely finished, some of them are in progress. And that first one is the 2018 and 2021 greenhouse gas emissions inventories. That was one of my first projects that I took on when I started, because I knew that we needed to have that emissions inventory as a baseline if we ever wanted to do a climate action plan. So we conducted those, and that led into some other projects following, including a solar inventory. We realized that we had solar on many of our city facilities, and we didn't know how much we were generating and how much potential there was for future solar on our facilities. So we've been in the process of conducting that. We also were awarded a grant from the Colorado Energy Office, and we conducted an e-bike to work program where we gave out 40 e-bikes to low and moderate income households who work or live in 2 of our business districts within the community. And we've seen that be wildly successful. Many of you have probably seen places like Denver, who have also had wildly successful e-bike programs, and that's no different over here on the west side. Some other projects that we have been working on that Darin will go into a little bit more detail about. The first is that EV plan, otherwise called an electric mobility plan, and Darin will get into the nuances of that name differentiation. But for this plan, we worked with Xcel Energy's Partners in Energy program to create this plan. In the 2020 comprehensive plan that I mentioned before, there was an emphasis on providing electric vehicle charging infrastructure for the community, and that transformed into a fully fledged plan to prepare for the increase in electric vehicles that we know are coming onto the market, especially considering what's coming from the state. As by 2030, they're anticipating almost 1 million electric vehicles to be on the road, and by 2035, significantly more than that. So we're really trying to be prepared for the coming electric vehicles with this plan. The next project that we are working on is LEED for Cities. Many of you have probably heard of LEED for buildings, but they, as of the last couple of years, now have a city certification process that we are going through. And this process, which Darin will speak to a little bit more, allows us to improve our data collection. It also allows us to establish methodology for that data collection. It's good marketing for us to show that the city is not only talking the talk, but walking the walk, and we can be transparent with our community with what we're working on. And this will actually help us to establish KPIs, key performance indicators, and metrics for our sustainability and adaptation plan, which is really the big project that we're working on right now. And Darin will get into this a little bit more again, but we have been working on a sustainability adaptation plan. It's the first sustainability plan that the city has ever done. It will have 5 focus areas, which are climate resilience, the built environment, water conservation, waste management, and energy stewardship. And we're about halfway through the process, and we're going to be getting started on establishing strategies here pretty soon. But this was one of the big ticket items that also came from our comprehensive plan, and why they established a sustainability division in the first place to create a plan like this. So we are really excited about this process, and I can't wait for Darin to share more with you. So if you're doing any of these projects and more, I didn't share everything that we're working on right now, but CivicSpark might be a good choice for you if you're tackling any of these fun but challenging projects. So before I hand it over to Darin to get into the details, I just want to share why having a CivicSpark has been really beneficial for us here at the City of Grand Junction. It's like Justin said at the beginning, those three different core areas: capacity building, fellow development, and volunteering. I really want to emphasize those first two. I mean, capacity building, the amount of capacity that Darin has helped us to build here has been incredible. I'm a solo office, and I bet there are some other solo sustainability coordinators out there as well. Keep fighting the good fight. It's a hard job, but having a CivicSpark Fellow can be so beneficial to getting more done and doing more well. And so I really want to emphasize the value that they bring in helping complete projects and just having a second pair of eyes on things. They are a full-time staff person, and so if your city can't necessarily afford a staff FTE, CivicSpark is a good opportunity to get some full-time help with somebody that might not cost your organization quite as much, but they still, CivicSpark is great because they provide healthcare for their fellows. So we're not leaving those folks behind. And a lot of CivicSpark fellows are either new to the workforce, or in Darin's case, new to the field. Because Darin is definitely not new to the workforce. He's got much more life experience than I do, but he brings new, fresh ideas to the industry. He isn't trained in the theory of sustainability, and I appreciate that so much, because he brings a whole new perspective that I might not have thought of, and it's just good to have some fresh eyes in the field. So I've really loved having a CivicSpark Fellow this entire time. I've seen his development. I guess that's the second point that Justin brought up, but his development and his confidence growing throughout this process has been incredible to see, and excited to see what he does next. But with that, I will pass it over to Darin to share with you more about what you want to hear is, how do we get these things done?
All right, thank you very much, Jenny, and thanks, Justin, for the intros as well. And this isn't part of my slides, but just for quick 20 seconds, I definitely, as someone changing careers, have continually talked about how good of an opportunity this has been for me to be able to get some of the direct experience on so many different projects that could be future career duties for me. I don't think it would have been possible to convince everyone that a guy with a PhD in English can do this without this experience from CivicSpark. So I've really loved it. And again, thanks for the intros. So I'll jump right in now. The City of Grand Junction EV Readiness Plan, which was named Rev Grand Junction, meaning ready for EVs. And we'll just talk about sort of the process, then some challenges in each project, and then successes in each project, and lessons that we sort of have taken from those. So as Jenny mentioned, the process with the EV Readiness Plan involved securing this coordination with Xcel Energy's partners in energy. And that began before I really started, as well as the Community EV Action Team, which Jenny helped, helped organize. And that was a little bit before I started. But that action team is really similar to what might be called a community steering committee in some cases, but it's made up of internal city staff and external community members who have important experience that could be very valuable in deciding what the key aims and strategies to reach those aims would be in an EV readiness plan for our community. Then Ginny was kind enough to let me kind of take the lead on organizing some focus groups and interviews based on my prior teaching experience. And so we conducted stakeholder focus groups with groups ranging from multifamily developers to auto servicers and dealers, and more folks in our business community and tourism and things like that. So in addition to that, interviews with some key external and internal people, again, who might have a direct hand kind of in implementation phase of this project as well. And then, of course, an internal project management team here. And we met on a very regular basis with our partners and energy consultants, typically bi-weekly through the development project or process. And that development process took about 8 months roughly. And then we have about an 18-month implementation period, which we have now kicked off just recently. And here, I won't go through each of these strategies in detail, but you can see the 3 overarching strategies that emerged from the plan: community adoption, public charging, and institutional fleet. We welcome questions at the end that might get into any of these specifics, but I'm going to move on to the challenges at this point. So I think depending on your community, some of these challenges may be very similar. Some might be a little unique to us. A lot of misinformation or disinformation was reflected back in some focus groups, even maybe ones you wouldn't have expected. In a related note, probably the starting point for community adoption here was quite low relative to the state of Colorado. Around 1% of overall light duty vehicles, whereas the state was as a whole around a little over 10% at the same time. We are seeing this go up now, but we started from that low adoption point when the plan was initiated. The nature of Grand Junction, which Ginny explained really well earlier, it's a very truck-centric and driving-centric kind of transportation culture around here, and off-roading is really a huge part of a lot of people's lives and the economy even in this area. So sometimes you're thinking of a vehicle as not just the thing you go to work and church and school with, it's a thing that you off-road with on the weekends as well. And then something here that compounds the typical kind of range anxiety that you hear of anywhere is that we heard this phrase a couple times in community engagement, that we're a landlocked island, that essentially we're the only kind of city-sized community anywhere close by. So that sort of compounds folks' range anxiety. And then speaking of the changes in the last 10 or so years that Ginny explained really well, the rates of rentership are really going up pretty dramatically here. And that's across, across all income groups. So that becomes a challenge for an EV plan when you think about how do folks charge at home, which is something we would like to have folks charge overnight, ideally, right? So in terms of successes, and this is where the mobility term came in earlier that Ginny mentioned, we were really, I think, maybe not shocked, but surprised in a very happy way how much of our community engagement revealed that folks wanted this plan to have equity in mind from the beginning, and thinking about, if your community has a lot of members who are thinking about paying their bills each month, a vehicle of any kind may not be on their radar for the near future. So what other forms of more sustainable mobility could this plan try to address? And so really it became an electric mobility plan, even though we didn't change the name to be not an electric vehicle plan, but our vision statement even targets increased access to electrified mobility, not just a particular rate of adoption of electric vehicles. So that's something that we didn't necessarily expect. We're very excited about, because I think based on the e-bike and e-scooter programs Ginny mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of success with that. So we had really good turnout for our community outreach and engagement. Between digital tools that we use from the city here and in-person events, we had engagement from somewhere around 900 folks, which is, I think, pretty good for this effort. And we heard a lot of helpful feedback in that process. Adoption, obviously always great. And we had unanimous adoption, which I think is really, sometimes statistics like that can really help be convincing of, a project you're proposing based on this plan, and this plan was unanimously adopted. So we were very, very excited about that. And then in terms of implementation, which we're now starting, we have already settled on a public charging fee structure that we've suggested. It isn't officially adopted yet, but it seems like it's on track to do so. And this is something that I think is a big success because we have been giving free charging away at the 3 stations we own here at the city. And that is not equitable. And it is something that if you are a taxpayer who doesn't own an EV, I think you could rightfully complain about. So we're on the path to remedying that. And I think that will be, that'll give us some good data, hopefully, for when we build out more public charging in the future. So just to quickly hit on some lessons from the EV readiness plan development process. I think this first one I already hinted at, but community receptiveness to e-mobility may differ a lot from receptiveness to EVs. EVs in our community by some folks are seen as anti other types of transportation, whereas an e-scooter is just a new thing. And I've seen personally a lot of privately owned e-scooters pop up since the pilot started. So I've seen people riding on their own electric scooter to work, the route that I take most of the time by bike. So I think that's something to consider depending on your own community. And then when you're doing community outreach events, engagement events, do everything you possibly can to get as many EVs and plug-in hybrid electrics, battery electrics, that people can see and sit in, ideally take a ride in. And in our case, we tried really hard to get some off-road capable vehicles because that is a big part of our driving culture here. And I think that really did make a difference. Without endorsing a model or brand, I will say one of the types of vehicles we brought is among the 5 most popular EVs that are registered in Mesa County. So I think that's definitely something to think about. And then find a local EV or regional EV owners club, EV drivers club, whoever you can reach out to come show off their vehicles, which I think they like to do, because what they can do is provide anecdotal experience to educate others who are curious about EVs but have concerns. Ginny spoke to, I think, over 60 people and gave a presentation on EV 101. But when the folks who were in the crowd started answering questions from their own experience, I think that was really, really effective. So the other lesson I have a separate slide on because it's a bit more detailed is with the EV charging fee structure. If you're new to this, which you may not be, but we were, start thinking about this early because it takes a lot longer than you might think. And while you're starting early, bring in a lot of other staff that are going to be affected because everyone will have a lot to learn and you might need to learn different things. But if you are considering, depending on where you're considering installing infrastructure, you might need to consult with everyone from your parking services to streets, utilities, parks and rec, even forestry in our case, depending on where we were talking about installing EV infrastructure. So you'll need to have those logistics being worked on across a lot of different divisions or departments, most likely. If you do have, so we currently have a vendor that we use for the 3 stations that we already had. And I've just been pestering them with email questions constantly and they don't mind and it's fine, and try to take advantage of that if you have that available. Also get access to your data if you have any charging stations, and you can start studying your usage, which can be really helpful for the fee structure. Another thing to be aware of, and I won't go into, but you can sort of research on your own, is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. We call it NEVI. There are starting to be some best practices that are emerging, sort of consolidating around what good public charging fee structures might look like, and even just sort of physically what that infrastructure might be like. As far as I'm aware of today, the only place that these standards apply in a compliance way is if you have a NEVI funded program, so NEVI funded infrastructure, but they do seem to be emerging as best practices in the field. So I won't go into the details here. If someone wants to get into the weeds in the Q&A, maybe we can a little bit, but you need to work to understand how your costs will vary as the organization providing charging. In our case, that is going to be based on cost per kilowatt hour, so like total power you've given out over a billing cycle. And that will also be really important to understand if you have something like what we are, what is called distribution demand charges for us. So the 1 interval, 15-minute interval per billing cycle where you have the highest usage, there's a compounded cost there. And so designing a fee structure that tries to take those into account, you need to kind of understand what those are first, as well as if you have on and off peak charges. So yeah, so what's next with the EV readiness plan? The foundational strategy is education. So that's broad community education. That's education for our auto dealers and servicers. That's education for internal city staff, city leadership, kind of across the board. So working with our consultants, as well as Drive Clean Colorado, which is affiliated with the Colorado Energy Office, and CLEAR, which is the acronym stands for Clean Energy Economy for the region. They all have a lot of experience in these types of educational efforts, so we'll be hopefully leaning on their expertise there, and doing a lot of outreach ourselves. So in addition to that, another larger strategy we'll be trying to work towards is public-private partnerships to locate charging equipment where we don't own the land. So far, the funding we've sought to install more charging is where the city owns the property, but that's not the only place it's needed. So that's where we're headed. And then our next project that Jenny introduced, we typically call it Lead for Cities, but what we are a part of is officially the Lead for Cities and Communities Leadership Cohort, and that's through U.S. Green Building Council. So a quick overview of the process on this one. We had started to work on the application and applied to the leadership cohort in February, and it is a national and competitive application. And then the introduction to the program started in May, and then essentially data collection starts right away, or as soon as you can start, and then is still ongoing at this point. And then certification, the materials are due by March of 24. So you can see the sort of about a year-long schedule there. And I guess I should add the leadership cohort brings no cost of certification process and a lot of really useful help from folks at USGBC. And David, I saw you on the list, so thanks for all that. And then for challenges for us, Jenny and I are very open when we feel like we don't understand something. We're happy to share that with each other. And just when we were beginning, it felt a bit intimidating and it felt a bit complicated, if we're being honest. But you'll see in the next slide that we worked through that. So just know that if your community is interested in starting this, if you feel like, wow, there's a lot after that first meeting, that's how we felt too, and it's fine. So data collection, yeah, the data collection that we sort of inherit from the city here depends on, it varies by division and department, whether it's being done at all or in what way it's being done. And in our case, as the next bullet point we'll get into, some things lie outside of the city organization. So sometimes the methods, metrics, or level of detail that LEAD requires is a challenge for us. I wouldn't say we have a huge strength in data collection in across the board here necessarily. So the unique nature of our community, and I'll just give one example of what I mean by this, are maybe not aligning so easily with the required data that's requested in this process. So water in Grand Junction is quite complicated. We have 3 different utilities that serve within city limits, and we have multiple private irrigation companies that operate within city limits. So just trying to do a base level, what is current water consumption in the city along the lines of what's required or requested is really, I mean, frankly, impossible. We don't have a way to force private companies to reveal their data to us, whether they have it or not. So in terms of successes, we have overcome some roadblocks. So going back to water again, the largest water utility inside city limits was initially wanted some more info when we requested information from them. And then I think the phrasing that was used from folks there was, we want to be a good neighbor. So they provided us with data. So that was, that's an example of overcoming what could have been a roadblock. And then in other cases, it's simply working with our cohort advisor and figuring out what are our absolute limitations, what's the absolute best we can do, and then trying to create a narrative to show that, this will help our data collection in the long run, and it's essentially the best we can do at the moment. So another success, the city manager's office has backed the process, which is huge, and lent staff hours from the office, which is really, really helpful. And in addition to that, we added an intern from the local university, which has been really, really helpful. So to overcome that initial intimidation phase, we just scheduled a really long meeting when everyone on the team could do it. And we just went through like a fake certification process and just identified which credits we would definitely try for, which ones we definitely wouldn't try for, and ones that would be maybes. So just to hit on that, and there's a lot to it, so I won't go in depth on that, but the process involves prerequisites, which you are required to collect data on, and credits, which you have the choice. So once we had done that trial certification, we felt like all of us kind of felt like, okay, I know what I'm actually out to do here. So lessons on this, I would say, leverage whatever high level of support you are able to gain. Leverage that in your written requests for data, not to be intimidating, just to say, hey, this is something the whole organization is interested in and wants to make happen. And then we organized the data request launch as a team, I would say in a quite detailed way, which was great. We knew when we were setting 2 rounds of requests out to which people, who was doing each one, and it really went smoothly. In addition to that, I would say meet often, weekly even, or bi-weekly, even if it's a short meeting, just anyone can report on the progress they've made or where they've gotten stuck. And the more we've done that, the more I think it's helped us keep moving forward. Allow team roles to shift when or as needed. One of our staff from the city manager's office was pretty much wiped out by the budget season. So, that's just a shift you have to make, and it's fine. And then stealing an adage from the service industry, I don't know how many folks have heard this, but if you're leaning, you're cleaning. If you're in the kitchen or barista or something like that, you might hear that. In other words, if you don't have anything to do, you always have something to do, which is clean. That's kind of how we're approaching lead as well. We make it on the front burner by these regular meetings, but then other times, if I find myself with 45 minutes, no meetings, nothing else immediately demanding my time, it's like, okay, what credit can I go chip away at right now? And I think that's a good way to think of it potentially. So what's coming is just more data collection, and then we're trying to have that done by December or in December, and then narratives will be written for each prerequisite, which we're drafting at the time, but once we're done completely with data collection, then we'll try to really polish those and make sure they're all cohesive. And then there's that 2-step review process that I mentioned earlier. So finally, I'll have a little less to say on this one because it's the most new and in progress, but the Sustainability and Adaptation Plan, the process is quite similar to the EV Readiness Plan, although Ginny put out an RFP and chose and hired consultants to work with on this project. Essentially very similar process to the EV Readiness Plan. I'd say one nuance that is different in this case is, in addition to the Community Steering Committee, we're also about to start roping in, I shouldn't say roping in, leaning on the expertise of a technical steering committee that will be consulted through the rest of the development of the plan to make sure that we develop strategies that can be implemented in the short, medium, and long term, not just sort of aspirational goals that we can't in the City of Grand Junction really execute. So it's about a 10-month process. Again, we're sort of at the end of phase 2, beginning of phase 3 out of 5. So our initial challenges, this was something that, Ginny has experience writing one of these plans before in another community, and made this choice. And I think it's been a challenge, and as I put in the parentheses there, a success, which is working with the broad community steering committee with the range of vested interests. And rather than have a plan that some parts of the community are involved with making, and then others feel like they were left out of, we wanted it to reflect the nature of the community. But then you are, having folks who come to it with different perspectives that may not produce consensus, right? So at least not on each issue, right? So we've had a good success reaching younger residents, and some high school students we spoke with provided really thoughtful input on the community engagement process, which was great. And then we actually have found consensus or near consensus on most of the key themes of the plan, like Ginny mentioned those 5 areas earlier. And I'll just put water conservation on screen because that's cut across all sort of sectors, political leanings, anything you could imagine. Out here, it's clear that water conservation is. So I will wrap up here with this last slide, but some lessons we've learned is the community members who are lending time to the plan, we need to clearly and repeatedly communicate the process and the role expectations of what they're doing, and also sort of the timeline, because we've had some folks maybe wish we were further along than we are at a certain point, and that's totally understandable. We all want to get it done, but just recognizing that everyone has a lot of demands on their time, and they're doing this for free because they care about the community. Really communicate that process and role info as much as possible. And then this is something we're really striving to get better at in all our projects, but we're recognizing that we need to continually rethink our process for community engagement and outreach to get more of the traditionally marginalized community members into our processes and our plans. So that's all I have. I guess I will stop screen sharing now, correct? And turn it back over to Justin.
Awesome, Darin, thanks. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Thank you so much for that. And what I'm excited about, like you said, this is Q&A time. We've got a lot of interaction here, so this has been fantastic. So we've already, Skylar's been helping, and Haley's been helping this whole presentation first, so a big shout out to them. And second off, they have been collecting your questions. This is great to have, because I think we've all been in some that don't kind of prompt this discussion. So I think it really speaks well to the work you're both doing out there. So first one, so I'll toss it out. I feel like we're on the couch now on the late night show, or one of these sessions we always go to, but or one of these conferences. So either one, step up, which one wants to jump on it first. How do you foresee increasing EV adoption among the recreation community, who often haul equipment and toys, including visitors? This was something that really stuck out when you brought it up a couple of minutes ago. I'm like, that is totally that area. So yeah, how's that been going?
Darin, how do you want to approach this? Do you want me to take them? Do you want to?
I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure if we have a great answer to this one. This is definitely something we've talked about, and I think there actually are some electric, like, side-by-sides and things like that. I don't know how tough of a sell that is. I imagine it might be. I think that one thing that we had meetings with the county at one point thinking about a possible kind of combined regional EV grant application or charging infrastructure application. And I know that the city, or the county's community development director, was specifically thinking about this. So I'm not sure where they got to on that, but they were thinking about even sort of EV charging sites that were made with long pull throughs, just thinking of someone who's pulling equipment or an RV or something like that. I mean, one thing that we've talked about is, like, maybe there's something to be part of the outreach strategy, just the wider education strategy on, like, if you have a household with more than one vehicle and you off-road, like, maybe one of the other vehicles doesn't need to be an internal combustion engine, or maybe we just need to help them see the sort of incentives and opportunities that are there. And so, like, maybe we're not going to replace the Ford F-250 that's a Turbo Max, but maybe they see that another vehicle for their everyday driving might be a big cost savings to them. And yeah, I don't know. That's not a perfect answer, but I don't know if Jenny has anything to add.
Yeah, I would foresee that some of the larger vehicle models, some of the larger trucks that are going all electric, might be popular amongst these groups, in addition to the PHEVs, the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And in order to help plan for folks wanting to transition to electric vehicles who do some of this off-roading or recreating with toys, we are planning to put EV charging stations at trailheads that are on land that we own. So we've got a couple of those that we're planning for right now.
And yeah, I guess I would add, so I often look at, there's a website, a dashboard called Evaluate Colorado, and you can look pretty deep dive by county on which vehicles are most popular. And there's a plug-in hybrid electric Jeep model that is in our top 3 or 5 pretty much every month. So the Jeep dealership was one of the dealerships we brought in as many as we could to a ride and drive event. And they reported to us that they're actually seeing people who come in wanting a Wrangler, and I'm not trying to do a commercial for Jeep, this is just what we heard, wanting a Wrangler or something like that, and then buying the plug-in hybrid electric because the electric drive has more torque and horsepower. So they're using the gas engine to get to where they want to off-road, and then it's now a thing, silent off-roading. So you're silently off-roading and then once you're done off-roading, you drive back with the internal combustion engine, which isn't, maybe perfect, but it's at least an encouraging sign that maybe performance is the angle to target with that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll nerd out on that. That's what I've heard up here with that. I think it's also they're good options because I think those Jeeps have like a range of like 25, 30 miles on all electric. That's what most people are doing. They're driving their kids around, going to school and stuff. So it's at least a step, like you said. And I know you were in that part of the conversation, to interject myself in it earlier, talked about when you did the scooters and how many more people have bought their own. I was one of them after I got kind of addicted to the ones down in Sac. So I have a nice little green belt that it's a little bit easier to run around and save some gas on. So it's nice. Jumping next, how did you include renters and workforce charging into your EVSE public infrastructure planning? And then the follow up on that, how did you factor in EV owners who may have had level 2 charging at home?
Sure, I can speak to this one. So as far as the renters and workforce charging, it's definitely a difficult thing to try to work on. When we were thinking about it, we really tried to look at some of our disproportionately impacted communities in our census tracts, and we try to ensure that we're putting in charging stations in some of those neighborhoods, because renters don't usually have the option to put in a charging station at their home. So in order to help reduce barriers, we want to make sure that there's accessible charging nearby their homes. I saw another question refer to this, I think, but another thing that we're looking at is Colorado car share. It wasn't actually part of our electric vehicle readiness plan, but it's something else that the sustainability division, along with our mobility division, have been looking into to see if we can get electric vehicle car shares located near some of our larger multifamily housing units. And then I guess there was a second part of that question, right? Thinking about EV owners who may have level 2 charging at home. I don't know if I can fully answer that question, but when we were planning and thinking about homeowners and trying to encourage homeowners to have level 2 chargers in their homes, one of our strategies in the charging infrastructure was about the permitting process. And so making that process easier is one of our short-term strategies that we've decided upon.
And Jenny, did you want to add about the new state code that will apply to multifamily soon?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So if in the state of Colorado, the Energy Code Board adopted a really, I don't know what the right adjective is, but a new code that will go into anytime a community updates its electrical or building code between July 2023 and July 2026. It's going to be requiring EV or electric ready appliances, solar ready construction, and electric vehicle charging ready. So we find mixed response in our development community, I would say, to the idea of installing charging infrastructure at multifamily units, and we weren't sure how we were going to address it exactly. And then the state made this new code, so now we just are going to rely on the state doing that. And it's a pretty, I guess I'll use the word aggressive in terms of the numbers, percentages of charging sites it requires based on square footage and usage. But I think the piece that, going back to our foundational strategy being education, there might be a role the city can play in helping the information that's required for that to happen successfully, get out there. So I guess that's all I would add on that.
All right, great. So I'll keep it going here. Have you all explore the potential to add vehicles to grid? And the codes, this is where I'm going to lose my stuff here. So hopefully I said V2G or V2X technology in your chargers, where vehicles get feed energy back to the grid. So it's I know that part, back to back, feeding back to the grid.
Yeah, we have not talked about it, unfortunately. I think that's maybe a missed opportunity on our part.
All right. Are the major employers at Grand Junction open to conversations concerning workplace charging and identification of commuting ranges and patterns? Second part of that question, are facilities willing to add on-site generation to increase resiliency and mitigating demand charges?
I'll take the first part of this question. Darin, do you want to take the second part? Sure. So major employers, we had some major employers who were involved in our EV planning process and some others who weren't due to lack of time. But I know that there are a couple of major employers who are considering putting in workplace charging or in the process of putting in workplace charging. Yeah, so we've got quite a few who are interested. They see the benefits. Some of them have had questions. And so thinking about things like providing services, like giving a webinar about some of the potential grant opportunities or other sources of funding is something that we've considered as well.
Yeah, and I would say, just to add to that quickly, a couple of the interviews that I conducted were with local business group leaders, and they were very much interested in both electric micromobility and charging site hosting. And it's a matter of connecting them with utility incentives, state incentives, information, and that's going to be part of this implementation process, I think. And there's, yeah, like Jenny already said, that an example that popped in my mind, there's a large VA hospital in Grand Junction, and it has tons of carport parking that's all covered in solar, and they have one or two chargers, but there's probably an opportunity there to increase capacity. So I think we do see solar, I think, really does appeal to folks here. And then what else you can piggyback onto that. So I missed the last part of that second part of that question. I just saw it go by, but yeah, I guess so. We do see a lot of solar on industry buildings. You see it on, like I said, VA hospital. I think folks, we're like one of the best locations in the country for solar, honestly, in terms of a combination of some decent elevation and lots of sunny days and lots of clear sight lines too. So.
Yeah, I think the question is about storage, and I think that's everybody's question. It's definitely an added expense, but it's something that we're all considering.
All right, I'm going to do one more. It looks like that'll kind of be on the same line. What have there been discussions of incentives or stipends to get better community engagement along this? Including food, childcare, transportation, anything. You've kind of reached out to the community to see, what their feedback is to this idea.
To the idea of
I believe it's just the idea of just the whole EV adoption program. So the basic community feedback in other areas, especially the ones that you talked about, need a little bit more of that outreach.
Yes, I want to see the question. Sorry. Oh, yes, we did. Stipends is definitely something, when thinking about equity, that we should be doing. Unfortunately, we have not been able to give out stipends during this process. However, we have provided food at all of our events and childcare when we provided the EV Ride-in Drive. We did have childcare present at that. We also have Spanish language interpreters that we either can hire through the city, or we have a program called Language Line to be able to interact with folks with, I believe there are up to 60 different languages on that program. So that is another way we've tried to help people engage with us more equitably. The transportation consideration is also a big one. We are a sprawling community, and it is harder for some people to get to the locations. Like, we always have them at this barn that is right downtown at one of our biggest parks. But for folks who live 5 miles away, the bus only comes once an hour. Thinking about transportation is something that we need to do a better job of. Again, that's why we have a mobility department as well, trying to help think about increasing access to transit and other forms of transportation.
We got about 5 minutes left, so thanks. I mean, we are getting hit with questions. This is fantastic. Just so everybody knows, here in a couple minutes, I will share the screen with our contact information for a couple notes to close it out. But I do want to hit 2 more that I'm seeing come up here real quick that I thought were great and kind of hit a lot of the communities. First off, how do you avoid response fatigue with your community with all these plans happening? Like you said, it was a big adoption, big rollout, a lot of energy and excitement. How do you be sure that the community is staying focused as you're working along these plans?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we're, I would say, sort of experiencing right now with our sustainability and adaptation plan. The city has taken, I would say, a stance that we don't do surveys really anymore because the community is surveyed out. And so we're trying to find new and innovative ways of engaging with people. And maybe they're not innovative for other cities, but for us, things like Engagement HQ, we're trying to be able to interact with folks virtually. Post-COVID, it seems like that's a really good way to continue to engage with people. Again, those incentives and food and trying to make things fun and interactive and family friendly. We try to make our events have not even just kid activities to the side, but try to make everything that is family oriented. So you don't have to leave your kids at home or put them in a corner with a coloring book, but you can actually have them engage, especially thinking about sustainability. I mean, the kids are the future that we're trying to think about. So we want them engaged as much as possible. Darin, did you want to add anything to that?
Only, again, not an earth-shattering strategy, but just showing up at events that are really popular in the community so that you're not requiring them to come somewhere else. And this is where, in terms of reaching traditionally marginalized groups, we just need to show up maybe at different places and times. And we're working on that right now. So we have an idea for one that's coming up. But yeah, like there's a festival here called Southwest Arbor Fest that's really popular. So we went there with a booth and brought a big map of the city and said, stick a pin where you think there should be a charging station, and just, yeah, I guess if they're out there having a good time and then you can just get their attention for 5 minutes rather than making them come to some extra thing, I guess.
Oh, that's great. And that kind of bleeds this next one because that was obviously the community. This is dealing with your city council. You talked about some of it's a different kind of demographic out there on that side of Colorado than some other areas, like the Front Range example. So what do you think contributed to you being able to get 100% adoption of the EV plan by your city council? As you said, had a lot of gas and had a lot of, it's a big trucking industry. It was a lot of challenges you had to overcome there.
Yeah, I think we did a good job of outreach to the community. Like Darin said, I think we engaged with just under 1,000 people, both virtually and in person. So we had a ton of engagement. And our city council has deemed sustainability a priority. I think that they've seen that our demographic is changing a little bit and that this is what people are interested in, that people care about the natural environment. It's such a beautiful place out here. And there also is fiscal stewardship is a part of that resource stewardship strategic priority. And there's a lot of cost savings that come with electric vehicle ownership long term. And there's a lot of money out there right now for it. And so I think our council sees that there's benefit in cost savings and benefiting our community by adding infrastructure and things like that.
And I just was going to add, I know one council workshop that we went to, one of the council members reported meeting with one of the business investment districts where we had an e-bike ownership program that Ginny mentioned, and also the e-scooter pilot was operating there. And he reported that he had heard a lot of local business owners in that it's the Horizon Drive bid is what we call it. Their employees had way more flexible transportation, were able to show up more reliably and conveniently for them and the business owners. And I think that was a vote that maybe we wouldn't have necessarily thought we were going to get, that we did. And I think, so that's where considering more than just vehicles was maybe, we didn't know how smart it was, I guess, the fact that e-bike program and that e-scooter pilot were running and the vision statement targeted mobility, electrified mobility, I think was actually possibly part of the explanation as well.
Well, great. You know, we are running right up to 11 o'clock here. So a couple things here quick. If you dropped in an answer or question, I'm going to share the screen and get our emails up. Is everybody seeing it right? There we go. For Darin and Jenny, they are A+ communicators. They've been a great resource of feeding obviously information back to us as we've worked with them here at CivicSpark. And as you can see, they're more than willing to share their experiences with anybody else out there. So please reach out. They are a fantastic group to work with. I'm so glad that they decided to help us out today. Other couple notes, if you saw the, I think we dropped an article that Darin wrote for us that was actually posted on the CivicWell site. So please take a look at that. It was great work of covering some of the stuff that Jenny and Darin have been working on. And also, just real quickly, thank you two also for plugging CivicSpark in it. I took one of the questions we had earlier. Again, it's been a great, you know, all the things we covered early on in this discussion. For those, we're still doing, we have a couple days left and we could stretch it out, especially in Colorado region and Washington region. We have a couple days left of our 3/4 time recruitment that actually closed on November 3rd. But if you get a hold of me between now and then, if you need capacity help, it's something that we can do. Skylar, if you could steal, if you haven't done it yet, because I had to change my screen, I apologize, but if you could steal my little notes there where it says our timeline real quickly. We're more for those that are looking for next year. Our service years traditionally, our service years run from mid-September through August. So for the 24-25 full year of service recruitment, as you can see, January through February, our current partners will start hearing from us, and early application process will begin then. February through April, partner and fellow full service year recruitment. That's a kind of twofold thing we'll attack there. May through June, fellow routing period. That's where you'll be able to be part of that interview process with the fellows that we've collected in our routing pool. And then July, finalization of full year placement. So for those that have been partners with us in the past, we are kind of scooting this schedule up a little bit earlier to help make it a little bit easier on your side as well and get some great feedback. And then mid-September of 2024 is the start of the new service year. So very quickly wrap it up. Thank you for the extra 2 minutes. So thank you again to our speakers for joining us today and sharing your expertise. They are great. Reach out to them. It's been a pleasure to work with them, and they made me feel really at home real quick when I got to join CivicSpark again. So I owe them a personal thank you as always. We'd like to encourage you to join our member network. CivicWell members receive event discounts, legislative updates, resources, information about funding opportunities, and more. Visit civicwell.org/membership to learn about the program. I think that was also just dumped into the chat, so hopefully it's there for you. We will also send out a recording of this webinar to all who registered. Please feel free to share it with your networks. If something doesn't come through, shoot us an email. We'll get it over to you. So check the spam and all the filters that we have on a lot of our stuff, but we want to be sure you get that and have the opportunity to share. If you have any other questions, fire them our way. Be sure you reach out. It was great hanging out with you all today. Jenny, Darin, thank you so much. Skylar and Haley, thank you so much for setting up. Everybody go have a great rest of your day. Happy November 1st, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks.